Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. In today's video, I'm going to be making a spring garden themed wreath. For my project, I'm going to be using this 40cm diameter WoodBlank that I got from a craft website. It also has a round frame around the outside. I'm going to need something to attach my wreath and the other bits and pieces to, so I'm going to drill some holes into the frame that runs around the outside of the WoodBlank. I'm just going to drill that through. I'm going to be doing 4 different holes for this. Next, I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Cozy Beige chalk paint. I'm going to be adding 1 coat to the center of my WoodBlank. So basically my vision for this is that I will have a design in the center. You could do stamping, you could do stenciling. We are going to be doing an IOD transfer, and I wanted to keep the center part quite neutral because there's a lot of other colors and elements that are going to be added to this piece. I don't want the center to be overwhelming, so I'm going to add 1 coat of this paint and then let it dry. And then I'm going to be using IOD's Ephemeral Melange Transfer. This is an 8-page transfer. If you haven't seen this one before, there are so many beautiful florals, vintage style advertisements. There's also some vintage style labels, seed packets. There's so many to choose from. This is definitely one of my favorites. This is the 2nd packet of this that I have opened, so I've definitely enjoyed using it. I'm going to be using this Maze Roses design here, and I'm going to be just working out in the center there just how much of the transfer I'm going to be using. I'm then going to curve the corners of the transfer so that it will sit flat over my surface. Cutting it this way is also going to make it a lot easier for me to add my transfer. Once I've done that, I'm going to peel the backing sheet off and then position it in the center. The grid lines definitely help with this. I'm then going to go over the top of the entire transfer with the plastic transfer tool that comes with the transfer. And at this point, I just want to make sure that the entire piece is stuck down. And then once I've done that, I will pick up a corner and I will start rubbing and lifting. You'll see I'm lifting and rubbing as I go. If I have any areas that have not released, I put the plastic back down and continue to rub. I just worked in sections, making sure that I didn't go too fast because I don't want to damage the image. And I just continued until I had that whole image down. Once I was finished, I did use the carrier sheet to further rub and burnish over the top of the design. I'm then going to take out IOD's Barnwood Planks stamp, and I'm going to be using IOD's permanent black ink. I'm just going to ink up one side of the stamp, position it on the right hand side there in that empty space, and I'm pressing down gently. I don't need a perfect image here. I want it to look like the design is on some wood planks. If I get ink where I don't want it, I'm just using a wet wipe to pull it back from the transfer. I added a bit more ink to my stamp, flipped it over, and now I'm adding it to the opposite side. I'm then going to maneuver that stamp around the inside section there, making sure that I'm not overlapping too much on my transfer. I don't really want the ink on my transfer, and just continuing to fill in that blank space so that it looks like it's on old wood planks. Once I filled in the blank areas, I did then take a wet wipe and I started to wipe back some of the ink. This is just going to give it more of a faded, more subdued look. I don't want it to be too overpowering. Obviously the transfer is the star of the show. I don't want that to be overshadowed by the Barnwood Plank stamp, but I just do really love the texture and depth that this is given. To seal the center section, I'm going to use Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin, and I'm just going to be applying 1 coat in the center. You'll see that I also add it around the outside inner sections. That's just to make sure that it is all sealed up and that I haven't missed any areas. Once my sealer was completely dry, I took out this grapevine wreath that I had in my stash, and I'm actually going to be pulling it apart. I'm first of all going to undo the florist wire that is wrapped around, holding the grapevine wreath different sections together. And I'm going to be using this wire, so that will definitely have a purpose, but I need to pull it apart first because obviously this is too small. I want that to go around the outside framed border section on the WoodBlank, so I need to pull it apart first. And I'm just going to continue to gently pull these apart. I don't want to break it, but I do need these apart so that I can reshape it and resize it. So I'm just going to keep pulling at this until I'm happy with how it looks. I actually have a couple of these, so I did end up pulling another one apart as well that we'll use a little bit from. And once I have that roughly the shape that I want, I can move on to the next step. Once I'm happy with how my wreath is looking, it's the size that I want it, I'm going to then be using some of that florist wire that we took off, and I'm threading it through the holes that we created at the start and then using that to secure the grapevine wreath in place. I'm going to be adding that at each of the 4 points. Once I'm finished securing the grapevine wreath into place, I'm going to be taking out these little terracotta pots that I had in my stash. I believe you can also get them from Amazon. I'm then going to be using the brush that I used with the Cozy Beige, and I'm going to offload that paint onto that napkin there, and then I'm going to start doing a little bit of dry brushing over the top of the terracotta pots. I want these to look a bit more weathered, almost maybe like there's some liming going on, and I'm just randomly adding that. Then I'm going to use a wet wipe to pull back some of that paint to fade it a little bit more. And then once I am happy with how that's looking, I'm going to be taking out Paint Couture's Vertigreen glaze, and I'm going to add that in certain areas to simulate the look of moss. Ultimately, I'm going to be having a few different styles of pots, and this is one example of how I'm going to decorate it. Another thing that I'm going to be adding is Dixie Belle's Dixie Dirt. If you don't have this, you could use some shavings or dustings of black chalk pastels. That could also work as well. And I'm just going to be random about it. I don't want these to all look really uniform. I want them to look weathered and aged. And as I said, I'm going to have some of them look like this. I'm going to also have some of them that are untouched, and I'm also going to have some that are just the plain terracotta, but I'm going to add some of that Dixie Dirt to it to make it look like garden dirt. This particular little pot had a little chip out of it where I had dropped it accidentally previously, so I'm just going to add a little bit of dirt to that, drawing some attention to the imperfections. I'm also going to be using this greenery that I pulled off an IKEA garland, but we're going to put that to the side because first I need to start attaching these little pots. I'm going to be threading through some of that floral wire, and I'm going to cut off the length that I need, and then I'm going to be attaching the pot itself to the grapevine wreath. These are not heavy at all, so attaching it to the grapevine wreath will be more than enough to secure it in place. So I'm just threading that wire through and then twisting those little pieces together and tucking that underneath the wreath. Now obviously this wire is brown as well, so it will look pretty uniform. It's not going to stick out. I'm going to continue to add the little pots. You'll see I'm alternating between the whitewashed pots and the more terracotta pots that don't really have that much done to them. And you can also see that I'm changing the direction of them. I'm sort of putting one off to one way, and then for the next pot I'm putting it off the opposite way. So this was just something that I did to my taste, just as I was adding it, just however I wanted it to look. If you're going to do it, obviously you could use some larger pots. Perhaps you could even add in some variety when it comes to the size of the pots. It just depends on the look that you're after. You'll notice I've also put some little bird's nests there. I just have them sitting roughly where I want them to go. They are some that I got from a craft website. I thought that was a nice touch. To attach the bird's nests, because they're so light, I'm just going to add a dab of hot glue to the wreath itself, and then I'm pressing down the bird's nest until it's attached. Next, I'm going to start adding the little sprigs of greenery. Originally, I thought that I was going to have to hot glue them in place, but I found that I was actually able to just thread them through into the grapevine wreath, or in some cases even into the wire that I was using to attach the little terracotta pots. And as I'm positioning them, you'll see I'm also adjusting the greenery to work in and around the pots, and I just continued adding those until I was happy with how it looked. I kept it pretty simple and neutral by just adding this type of greenery. If you wanted to, you could definitely add a bit more color by perhaps adding some different flowers, some different feathers. I guess it just depends on what look you're trying to achieve with this wreath. As I mentioned previous, in the center, obviously I used the transfer and the stamps. If that wasn't to your taste, you could come in with a stencil. I saw one on Pinterest that I really liked that said potting shed, which I thought could also be really lovely. I just went with this design because I absolutely love the ephemeral melange transfer, and I felt like it was a simple but great addition to my piece. Once I was finished adding the greenery, I then moved on to adding some hot glue into each of the little pots. And then once I've added the hot glue, I'm going to take out some forest moss and put that into each of the pots. I do have this linked in my Amazon storefront. I just really liked this extra touch of making it look like they were little pots that were in the garden that had been collected and brought together. So I really like this touch. You could also probably use Spanish moss. That would also look lovely. Or like I said before, maybe you want to come in and add some florals to these. You could definitely go in a whole bunch of different directions if you were going to give this a try. As I was adding the forest moss, I noticed that quite a bit was accumulating down the bottom, so I decided to embrace it. I actually ended up adding some hot glue to the bottom, and now I'm just moving some of that excess moss and dust to the bottom section. I felt like it really tied in well with the piece. Next, I'm going to take out the front and back covers of the ephemeral melange transfer that I've already used up, and I'm actually going to be cutting out the designs on the back. I really like these little rose designs. They remind me of seed packets, so I'm going to be cutting out each of these. And of course, the front and back cover of IOD transfers are cardboard, so these are going to have a little bit more durability, so they're quite perfect for what I'm thinking of using them for. I also decided to cut out from the front cover this little seed packet style design. Next, I decided to add an uneven edge to the bottom of the little roses designs that we cut out, and to curve the upper corners just so that they would look a little bit more like the other seed packet design that I cut out from the front cover. As I said, I want these to look like old seed packets. So my next step was to take out Paint Couture's light brown sugar glaze, and I'm going to go over the top of the white backgrounds on these rose designs. I feel like that will tie in a bit better with the other one that we cut out. I'm just brushing it on, and then I also went in and did some dabbing and stippling. I'm just doing one coat. This is going to give each of these the age that I want to achieve. When the glaze was dry, I took out my hole punch, and I'm going to put a hole at the top of each of our little seed packet designs. Next, I'm going to be attaching the larger seed packet design to the bottom section, and I'm actually going to be using some of the wire that's already there. I'm just pulling that through the hole and then twisting that in place to hold it. To attach these smaller seed packet designs, I'm going to be using just some simple twine. I'm threading that through the hole that I created, and then I'm actually going to tie this one to some of the wire that's already holding one of the little terracotta pots in place. I'm going to tie a double knot, and then once that's secured, I'm going to cut off the excess. And as you'll see, I do tend to sort of move the greenery in the pots around to sit around it to make it look a bit more cohesive, like it's part of the design. And I'm repeating the same process for the other 2 seed packet designs. Next, I wanted to add in a little bit more movement, another little layer. So I took out a thinner piece of the grapevine wreath, and you'll see I'm just starting to thread that through over the top because I want some of this to be visible. I'll also have some of it sort of coming out the side and down the bottom. I felt like this gave it a bit more body, and as I said, to me it just felt like it gave the piece a bit more movement, and it really felt like it finished it off a bit. Today's project was inspired by a variety of images that I saw on Pinterest, and I just wanted to create a piece that not only had the wreath design, but it also had that lovely IOD element in the center. I feel like these different pieces go really well together. I can imagine this on a mantle, or I could definitely see it as a front door hanger as well. I think this has a lot of different uses, and you could go in so many different ways with this if you were going to give this particular project a try. And here's a look at the finished project. I love how this turned out. It's definitely giving spring garden vibes in my opinion. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find most of the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.